Sarah, thank you for joining me today on my podcast.
Hey,
How
thanks
are you
for
doing?
having me. Good. Just making coffee, working, typical day in quarantine life.
How's quarantine life treating you as an artist?
Um, I've actually been one of the very few lucky ones. I work for Bandcamp, and we've been, you know, been doing quite well. So that's been really good. Like the company is obviously, we're pulling out a lot of stops to try to help support us through the pandemic. Um, so it's kind of weird, right? Like I am seeing all my colleagues losing their jobs. I lost a ton of shows myself. Like my band Smoulder was supposed to be touring Greece, the United States, Canada, and Germany this year. But still, like I still feel really lucky and grateful because I still have a job, and so does my partner. And we're right now we have a lot of time to write, so we're almost finished our second album. So in that way, it's been good for us, but it's also been pretty hard because watching all your friends and everyone that you care about lose their jobs, like I have a lot of survivor's guilt about that. And I think it's been pretty interesting, like watching that because the music industry has always been kind of set up that way. There's not a lot of support. And like the pandemic is kind of like illuminating the fact that there's not a lot of social structure. And it is really putting a lot of people who are already vulnerable in further risk.
Yeah.
So that's frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not personally, I don't consider myself much of a musician myself. I don't have any releases or anything. But, like, as an artist, I feel like um, just anytime you're creating something that you're trying to portray to anybody, there's any kind of critical hit to any point in society, you lose all interest almost instantly. Like if you're focused around like bars and stuff like that, like your band playing shows and stuff like that, you can't make
Yeah.
your money that way. Otherwise, you have to rely on your. I mean, everybody's got a job usually, so I mean,
Yeah.
if you start losing your job, what else are you supposed to do, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's a big question. I have a lot of friends. Like, this is the issue with the music industry is like a lot of folks, because they're touring frequently, they have jobs that are also kind of precarious, like precarious employment. So a lot of people in the music industry work in bars and restaurants and
Mm.
nightclubs, which are all also closed. So artists are being hit with this like double whammy. So um, as I said, like we've been very lucky, but it's been like kind of sad and like hard just watching that, just because we know how lucky we are, even though we lost so much, like with all those tours and everything. Like we had paid for all of our flights, we had booked everything, we had made merch, we had done all that stuff, and because like we are a small independent band, we had paid for everything on our
Didn't
own.
you land
So
in Greece like the day before Trump put the flight ban on? That
yeah,
must have been fucking nuts. I heard like you guys
it
had
was
to sell
awful.
merch out of like a small dive place or something that was barely even open or didn't want to
Yeah,
even.
like looking back at that, like we all talked about it quite a bit, because there was a lot of other festivals and shows that were happening around that time where people were like, okay, like we don't know how safe this is, like when are things going to stop? And like we made a decision as a band, it's like, okay, we're going to go, because like there was a festival the weekend before the one that we were supposed to play in Greece
Hmm.
that happened in Germany, called Hell Over Hamburg, and that one went off without a hitch. And there were still tons of bands on tour, and we were like, okay, well, we've already spent, you know we had spent like $7,000 on flights, and that was money that we weren't going to get back.
Right.
So we kind of made the poor decision to go, thinking like maybe we'll be okay, and then we were not okay. It sucked. Like it's gonna be like it's gotten to the point where it's like kind of funny to talk about, because like it's been long enough. But when it happened, it was pretty scary, pretty traumatic, really expensive. But we were lucky, like we kind of experienced this like really meteoric rise really early in our career, so to speak. So we do have a lot of fans, and people really supported us. So we got home okay. And as I said, like we're still working. So, like some of our bandmates are not working and like have lost their jobs. And two of our bandmates are in the States, which is its own level of being scary,
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
but, like everybody's surviving and like has either a partner or like something like that that's like helping them survive. So yeah, we're the lucky ones. So
For sure.
we do.
Now I saw you post the other day. You said you're what 5 songs into the new album?
Yeah, so, well, actually, we're now 6 tracks in. It's going to be 6 songs, just like Times of Seen Evil was. But I haven't written the lyrics for the last track yet, so that's like where we are. I'm just writing them right now, and then we're going to have another full album. But right now, it like doesn't make sense because with everything that's going on, like we're probably not going to be able to tour, and by we I mean all artists aren't going to be able to tour until at least the beginning of 2022.
Yeah.
So, like, we're not going to put out an album during a pandemic because from every person that we've chatted with, they've kind of said that it's been really difficult because everybody right now has other priorities than focusing on heavy metal bands releasing albums, and that's totally reasonable and fair. And we do, it was part of our dream to like tour Europe and play those festivals and stuff. So I think what we're going to do is just like keep writing. We want to have an album, an EP, and a 7-inch all done at the same time.
That
So
would
we
be
got the album almost
awesome.
done. And then we'll have all that. We'll record all of it simultaneously, kind of thing. But right now, it's like without a scheduled end of a pandemic, we're kind of in the same boat everyone else is in, being like, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Some of the other bands that I know that are all together in one place, they're able to sort of stream like live shows and stuff like that, which I guess is not exactly possible for you guys because you're all scattered or whatever, right? But
Yeah.
some of the other ideas are like music videos going out recently have been pretty popular as far as I've heard from a couple of my friends who've released a few. They've had some interesting turnouts with the views on those things. But
Yeah.
as an artist, when you're writing something, like, do you ever
Sorry,
get?
my coffee is cooking.
That's okay.
That's the noise.
Do you
Please
ever
continue.
get like writer's block?
Um, yeah, definitely. Damn, you are being aggressive, coffee. Yeah, of course. I mean, for me, like the beginning of the pandemic was writer's block. Like I wrote the album, without like getting too personal. When we wrote the album, it took a long time to like get Smoulder off the ground. Like Vincent and I, we moved from Calgary to Toronto. We wrote a couple of tracks jamming, but the earliest version of the band was like so different. It was me on drums, him on guitar and vocals. We tried to find a bassist for years. We could never find anybody who liked the kind of doom that we did. Everyone in the city we used to live in seemed to be really into stoner doom. We don't like stoner doom really at all. We didn't want to write it. So like getting the band actually started took so long. And when we finally actually found like good members, moved to a new city, kind of like started a different life, things just started falling together really quickly. And for me, at least, like the way that worked, oh, that's very dark. I apologize.
It's
The way
okay.
that worked was like I write music when I'm a happy person, not when I'm sad. Like
Yeah.
I know a lot of artists kind of like thrive on like depressive episodes. I shouldn't put it like that, not meaning to be like glib about it, but a lot of artists write when they're feeling sad and they're like having a rough time, and that is not how I operate as a musician or as a person. Like I'm creative when I'm happy and when I'm fulfilled. So the first couple months of the pandemic, I couldn't do anything. Like I was very sad. I think we were pretty like you know we had some traumatic stress left over from like what happened in Greece. So it took a couple months of like finally like getting used to the fact that we were indeed on lockdown, like getting used to the fact that we weren't going to be traveling, um, all of that. And then I started making like I started painting actually, and I hadn't really spent that much time painting before that.
Mhm.
Like I've always been like artistic, but never really invested in like in painting. So started doing that, and I would do it like I would wake up on a Saturday and I would paint for like 16 hours straight. And once I got through about 2 months of that, then I started writing music again. And so it was kind of an interesting period for me because, like, at that point, I was like, we should be writing an album and I'm squandering this time. But I think I just was too sad to like write anything. And now that I'm like, okay, like I understand that we are living through a pandemic, I know the steps I have to take. I've like found ways to kind of like cope with it. For me, now that I know kind of how long it's going to be, which, as I said, probably 2022 is when I think is a feasible timeline for people
Realistically,
being
yeah.
vaccinated. I'm very much like I'm a journalist. I've been a journalist for the last 15 years. Timelines are very useful for me. And now that I've like come to like I absorbed that and like know it in my heart that that's might be how long it is, I'm now okay with the fact that we're living through a pandemic.
Yeah.
So then got much more creative once I kind of accepted it and then found ways to like deal with it. So
Yeah, I think
you
coming
know,
to terms with it helps the flow. It's like, there's a dam built up. If you find a little hole in the dam and some water can get through, then
yeah.
okay, it's okay. The water's gonna get through eventually. The dam will burst eventually. Uh, so I guess, yeah, knowing it helps for sure. When you're, I don't know if it was one of your paintings, but when I saw that post that you put about the album being close to finish, was that one of your paintings on the opposite page?
Yeah, so that I mean a lot of the painting that I've been doing has just been like album covers. And also like I've also been really doing a lot of like woodcut linography style stuff.
Yeah.
So I believe the post that you might be talking about, it probably had the cover of New Dark Age. It was like a dragon that was like breathing fire. That one?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's like an EP by a band called New Dark Age. And that was actually what I was doing for a while was I would just like take my favorite albums and I was recreating the cover art on it. And I went a little overboard. I'm just gonna grab it because it's like I was looking back through it the other night because we were working on one of the tracks and I was just like, God, I cannot believe how much time I spent like painting album covers. It was like I couldn't believe how long I was doing that stuff. Because now I'm writing the album, so I'm not painting again. But yeah, there was like, yeah, I was doing a lot of stuff. Like I did like Court of the Crimson King, like
Nice.
King Crimson. Did a lot of them were like insanely detailed and like I don't know what I was thinking, but like
Wow.
screaming for vengeance.
Yeah.
Yeah, the classic big black songs about fucking. And then yeah, the New Dark Age EP.
Yeah, that's the one
I
that.
really like dragons, so I was like dragons.
Very
But yeah,
nice.
I did like a lot of stuff like that. It was fun.
I'm really a fan of the artwork on both the albums that you guys released, the EP and Times of Obscene Evil as well. Uh, is there a specific artist you go to? You have a go-to artist, or
Yeah, so we've been working with Michael Leland. So Michael Leland is like a pretty famous sword and sorcery style painter. He's been around since the 70s, and both the EP and the album were licensed works. So they were works that had been published on fantasy novels from the 80s. So the first one was a book called The Well of Shuan, had a female like lead character, and then the second one was from a book called Lore of the Witch World. That one's a compendium about witches. So we actually like that's kind of been our thing. I mean, initially, like finding Michael Whelan was a big thing for me because, like, I grew up with Frank Frazetta paintings because my dad was like really into Conan, and so he had
right.
tons of Frazetta paintings and comic books of Conan and stuff. And when I ended up seeing that Well of Shuan image, I was just like, that has to be our album cover. Like, it's so rare to find women painted in positions of power without them being heavily sexualized,
Yeah.
and like that was something that I really wanted was like a woman who was strong, who was in the position of power, not half naked and
Right.
writhing and in chains, because it's such a heavy metal cliche. And I get why, like it's like there's like elements of like dominance and like like sexuality and all those other things. And like all of those things are obviously appealing and they're appealing to men and to women and like they're appealing to everyone. But like for me, like I always felt like heavy metal for me was like this very empowering thing. And I wanted to like communicate that, like a woman being empowered, instead of
Yeah.
a woman like in chains, like please save me.
But
Like
yeah,
I
that
hate
is very cliche
it.
of not just metal, but of like
Yeah,
a lot of things. Like they call it damsel in distress situations in like Scooby Doo and stuff like that.
exactly.
And it's
Yeah.
doesn't always have to be that way. You can do things a different way. So I
Well,
feel
that's exactly it. I mean, like the whole like mythos and like archetype of Smoulder has been that, right? Is like subverting that cliche. And like, I mean, ever since I was a kid, that's always been like all of the people that I always looked up to, like Buffy the Vampire Slayer or the Secret World of Alex Mack. Like there were women who weren't like they weren't in distress. They were saving the day. Like Dr. Quinn, medicine woman, like to
yeah.
really get into the Canadiana. Like these were people who were like, like they were empowered and like that that is what I needed. Like that's what I want in my life is like narratives where women take control of their own stories because that is to me much more indicative of reality than women constantly being saved by big, burly, beefy, muscular dudes.
Yeah, I think your artwork comes across with that in mind. Sort of.
Yeah.
I have them on my shelf behind me, so definitely. Um, when you sorry, this is more of a freeform conversation. Like I said, I don't have. I usually have some questions lined up, but I don't have anything today. But you said you were testing the new feature on Bandcamp, the casting feature, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I work on the support team. So I work with like the apps team. So that means that like whenever there's a new feature, I end up getting to like test it, figure out what's wrong with it, all that other kind of fun stuff. So yeah, it's good. Like we just launched Chromecast support, which has been a very heavily requested feature. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I usually just use Bluetooth and play it from my phone. Chromecast, I mean, it helps, but I don't feel it's necessary for all things. Bandcamp, the app is useful though. So having Chromecasting on there as it being heavily requested, you might as well, right? Feels like a useful
Yeah.
feature, so you might as well have it on there. Um, but what else have you been up to during the quarantine?
Mostly just like both my like me and my partner have been spending a lot of time like in the backcountry, which has been really nice. And essentially like we've been doing a lot of hiking. I started kayaking as well. So honestly, it's just been like mostly that kind of stuff. We haven't really had anyone in our house for 7 months. You know,
Yeah,
like we're taking the social distancing measures pretty seriously. I have chronic illness, so it's just like not really like we're not willing to be at risk with those things. So been doing that, like exercising, hiking every single weekend. We're going to Algonquin this upcoming weekend to
nice.
spend 3 days in the backcountry. We're doing like this hike around Provoking Lake, which we did before, but this time we're also camping it. It's like a pretty intense 20-kilometer loop hike with the 850-meter elevation change. So we'll do that. And been knitting as well.
It's definitely good to get like a change of scenery and get some of the fresh air into you during this,
Yeah.
time when everybody's cramped up indoors. It's definitely good to get out. I went up north this
Yeah.
weekend to Fenland Falls and spent some time with my kids at the trailer. So we got to look at the
Okay.
stars and stuff like that. We haven't been up there since last year, so it was pretty nice. It's nice to get out and
Yeah.
enjoy that kind of stuff. You always need that. Um, when you're on stage, though, I know it's been a long time to put you in the spotlight. Put that spotlight on you and stuff. Um, I haven't been to a show in a really long time. I'm just trying to get this out. I haven't seen you guys perform live, so I'm really looking forward to 2022 whenever that happens. Rolling
Yeah.
around, getting to see Smoulder live. But when you're on stage and that spotlight shining down on you, uh, give me some feedback on that energy that you feel while you're performing.
um, I don't know. Like I've spent so much time performing in so many different capacities that I find it really invigorating. I think it's like really fun. I mean, I grew up like as a stage actor, as a kid who was in choir. I was a drama kid. I had a radio show in Calgary at CJSW. I've been on camera for Banger for several years. I was an extra in TV shows when I was a kid. I like to perform. I think it's like you really feed off the energy, and not only that, but like as a front person, like for the longest time, I didn't want to be the front person for the band because I think I just like internalized some like of the sexist like rhetoric about it, about like women
Hmm.
only being singers, which is bullshit because being a singer is really hard. Like you're working out, you're singing, you're like you have to be the center of attention, which can be very stressful. But at first, when I first started playing with Smoulder, and we played live, I was really stressed out and I was getting these really bad anxiety stomach aches and I would throw up like before we would play because I'd be so stressed. And then our fourth gig, we were in Germany at a festival, and that was only our fourth show. And we were opening the festival at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And I thought, okay, well, it's going to be like North American festivals. There's no one's going to be there. And we get out at stage at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and it is packed from the front to the back of the fucking hall. There's 1,500 people, and
Wow.
everyone's completely silent. And I was like, you know, and it freaked me out. It really freaked me out. But by the end of that show, that was 45 minutes, and that was my 4th time ever playing live, and there was 1,500 people there. I've never had stage fright since, and ever since then, I've loved getting out on stage, and I think it's really fun.
That's an amazing story.
Yeah, like you just get out on stage and your breath kind of catches for a second, and then you're just like, time to be really entertaining.
See,
that fucking sword.
When you started talking about that, you started saying, you never felt like you wanted to be the front woman or anything like that for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
And I mean, I kind of felt that too a lot of the time. I was like, I wouldn't, if I was ever popularized in any way in media or whatever, I wouldn't want to be like the front center of attention. I'm okay with being on the sidelines or whatever, but I don't think I could do it in the spotlight. And I was just like, wait a minute, I'm doing a podcast where, I mean, I'm the host. I mean, I'm technically shining a light on you here. I'm featuring you, but I have to do this every day, or not every day, but every time I do it, I have to do it. So I'm still sort of the main feature here, and I'm like, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. I never wanted that, but it's not the same as being a singer of a band for sure. I do get anxiety about it sometimes, but it's not really the same. I wouldn't, personally equate it to the same thing anyway. But I don't
know. I mean, like all of that stuff, because my cat is here to complain and to show his face. This is Odin.
Hi, Odin.
But yeah, like I never really anticipated being a singer or a front person. But now that I am, I think it's great. It's fun. It's also like, I don't like being recognized in public. And that's happening more and more, pandemic notwithstanding, because that's obviously changed because everyone's wearing masks everywhere. But yeah, I don't know. There's something about the actual act of performing. I love that part. Maybe not getting recognized in public. Getting recognized in public is just awful. So, yeah.
I've never
definitely true. Like makes you learn a lot about yourself and like what your comfort level is, I would say.
Yeah, I guess learning your comfort zones would be something you have to do when you get a little bit popular. Getting out there and, getting known that way, you have to be okay to, you're performing to these people and some of them might want to talk to you afterwards. So there you go.
Yep.
But I mean, time flies. Hopefully we'll get back out there soon and we'll be able to start jamming again and everybody playing and having those shows again, keeping everybody, apart from each other, mind. I know you have a meeting to get to, so I'm going to let you go now. Thank you for joining me, though. I appreciate it, and I will link you to all the things. Did you want to shout out your band or anything? I did already, but did you want to?
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
Well, epic heavy metal band called Smoulder. You can find us at smoulder.bandcamp.com. And our last release was our Drink Fest Ends EP that came out in March 2020. And we're signed to Cruz del Sur Records, and you can find us on Facebook and Bandcamp and Instagram. There we go.
Thank you, Sarah. We'll talk to you again soon.
No problem. Yeah, have a good one, Bo.
You
Bye.
too. Bye. Thanks, y'all, for joining me. Have a good one.